Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
All right, it is Wednesday, and all of our guests today, as always, including Farhan, standing by in Vegas. Brought to you by the Alberni Power and Marine RPM Group, located in Port Alberni. Alberni Power and Marine, one of Vancouver Island's most trusted boat dealerships. The largest Mercury Marine dealership in Canada. Their service team just won for a fourth straight year a customer satisfaction index score way above the national average. Make your appointment today for the 2022 boating season at albernipowermarine.com. Port Alberni, it's boating country.
Beautiful.
Just before we get to Farhan Delaney's OK Tire and Langley inbox, this is from Shade. If you would tell me at the start of the season, Canucks would have career seasons from Demko, Miller, Hughes, EP40, Horvat, Garland, I would think they probably finished near the top of the division. Again, that's from Shade. It's a good point.
It is a really good point. The core is there. They got to build around the core.
But in typical Canuck fashion, you look at some of the numbers, you look at some of the things that happen, and then they don't make the, and it's positive, they don't make the playoffs, and you scratch your head. Well, you don't scratch your head. I think you have a pretty good idea what happened. The start was horrible. Farhan Lalji joins us now from TSN. He, of course, follows the Canucks, but he's also in Vegas right now for the National Football League draft, which begins tomorrow in Nevada. Farhan, thanks for doing this, sir. How are you?
I am good. I'm good. But I got a bad food recommendation last night. If you're ever down here in Vegas,
yes,
don't go to Circa for dinner. So they've got like the massive screen, wall size all over, a bunch of mini screens. So I went there because I wanted to watch the Canuck game. I knew I'd be talking to you guys, so I had to know what went on there. And the food was like, I got nachos to start because we were going to be there for 3 hours, and it was cheese sauce. Like you get when you go to 7-Eleven.
Yeah,
cheese sauce, and they brought the food in takeout boxes, and so don't go there for food.
Okay, cheese sauce.
Go there to watch the games. Just don't go there for the food.
I didn't know they still made that. There was a time when I actually liked it, but
cheese sauce.
When BC Place first opened, and I went to games as a kid, it was cheese sauce on the nachos, right?
That's right.
That was cool back then, but not so much now.
That's a good point.
It's good to see that you've advanced food-wise.
Took a while.
Farhan.
Yeah,
what kind of
BC Place.
What kind of job is Vegas going to do hosting the draft, Farhan?
Well, like the job Vegas does holding any one of these big events, right? They do a great job. They know how to host guests and have a party. And we were by the set yesterday at the Bellagio, and it just looks spectacular. So, with everything that Vegas has to offer, they can offer such a unique experience to fans, to players, to everybody. It's going to look great. I can't wait for it to begin tomorrow night.
So let's focus on the draft. We'll get to the Canucks later, Farhan, if you don't mind. So the draft starts Thursday. Jacksonville, the number one pick. 2 defensive ends on the top of most lists. Aiden Hutchinson of Michigan, Trayvon Walker of Georgia. Who do the Jags go for, Farhan?
Well, it's sounding more and more in the last few days like it's going to be Trayvon Walker from Georgia, and he put up such an impressive performance at the Combine, like virtually a perfect athletic score, or relative athletic score, as they say. For a guy his size to have the movement skills that he has, his production at Georgia was ordinary compared to what Hutchinson did this past season. But, that defense was so good, they didn't ask him to do as much as maybe Hutchinson was asked to do at Michigan. Now, Hutchinson's a very safe prospect. He's been the number one guy on the board all along, but this guy, Walker, could be an absolutely generational talent at that position if he figures it out and can have the production match the athletic traits, which I think when he gets to the NFL, he's going to be able to pull off. So I think they're going to go with Walker, and I think it's probably the right thing to do.
Seahawks have pick number 9, courtesy of Denver and Russell Wilson. They could use a quarterback, but is there a quarterback out there who warrants the 9th overall pick?
I don't think so. And that said, there could be 2 quarterbacks that go in the top 8. I wouldn't be shocked if Carolina took one at 6 and Atlanta took one at 8, but that would be a mistake because there aren't 2 quarterbacks good enough to be taken that high, and I think the Seahawks should buyer beware. So I think they've got some really good edge players, which we talked about 2 of them. Kayvon Thibodeau from Oregon is the 3rd. There's 3 very good offensive linemen, Ekwonu, Neal, and Cross. Keep an eye on all those guys. And there's a couple of really good corners. Those are all positions of need for the Seahawks. So if one of those guys is available at 9, if they don't get all scooped up in the top 8, which I don't think they will, because I think a quarterback will sneak up in there, I think the Seahawks will take somebody at one of those positions. Now, at the bottom of the first round, I'm interested to see what Seattle does because they have the 40th and 41st picks in the second round, and I don't think Desmond Ridder, the Cincinnati quarterback, or Matt Corral, the Ole Miss quarterback, will last to 40 and 41. So could you see Seattle wind up packaging some picks and moving up into the 28 to 30 range to get their quarterback of choice? And if you pick a guy in the first round, you also then get his fifth-year option. So you see a lot of that. It was a trend that was started by Lamar Jackson in Baltimore where they traded back in so they could get him. I could see that happening late in the first round for Seattle to go get a quarterback, and that would make a lot more sense.
Farhan, 4 Canadians picked in the NFL draft last year. What's the Canadian talent this time around?
I think there's going to be 2. John Mechie from Alabama, Brampton, Ontario native, will likely go in the second round. He probably would have gone late in the first if he didn't have an ACL injury during the national championship game, during the SEC championship game. So he'll be ready for camp, but he wasn't able to do any of the running, any of the pro day work or the combine. So he's going to slip, and I expect he'll go in the second round. Keep an eye on New England as a possible team that would take him and reunite him with his college quarterback, Mac Jones from Alabama. And then the other one is Jesse Luketa from Ottawa and Penn State. I think he's going to go day 3, probably somewhere around late round 4, early round 5. You know, there's a number of teams like Kansas City, Pittsburgh, the Steelers, who've spent a lot of time diving into his background and having him in for a visit. A couple of those teams run a 34 defense, which I think would be a really good fit for him. I think he goes there. And then after that, you know, there's an O-lineman or a D-lineman named Louis Villain who recently transferred, and Daniel Joseph. There's a few guys that are going to be on the fringes, but I don't think they'll get picked. I think they'll sign as priority free agents immediately following the draft on the weekend.
Switching gears, Canucks beat the Kraken 5-2. You say you watched the game down there in Vegas last night. If the Canucks make their management and coaching changes before they did, do they make the postseason?
I don't know. I mean, I think the roster is what it is. Look, do they make it? Probably. And I say that because I think Bruce Boudreau probably would have done some things differently with the penalty kill and the forecheck earlier in the year where it wouldn't cost them games. You know, for me, this team is not a 31-15-5 team, a 650 playoff percentage or a points percentage team. But they're certainly better than where they currently stand. And, you know, look, the Dallas Stars are a very good hockey team, and they're going to be in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. So could the Canucks have made it? Yeah, I think they would have. I think there was a few things that if they had been done a little bit differently or done earlier, I think it would have made a difference. But, you know, this team is not a contender, and they're not a slam dunk to get into the playoff next year if they brought the same roster and same coach back. So I think some improvements need to be made, and, you know, starting with their back end, and we'll see if they can execute it. But first things first, let's get Boudreau signed to an extension.
Agreed. You were around in the 80s, and, of course, you remember the Messier era. They've missed the playoffs, the Canucks have, and Dallas beating Vegas last night. I didn't mention that in the previous question. So they don't make the playoffs 6 of the last 7 years. Is this the darkest era in Canucks history?
Yeah, it feels like that. You know, and I think the Messier era in the 90s was dark. Like, it was awful.
Yeah.
You know, but once he was gone, you know, Naslund was there and kind of ready to take a step, and they slowly were able to get the goaltending figured out and kind of move it forward. But right now, it's only this year, since the coaching and management change, that it feels like there's a legitimate plan. I think Trevor Linden had one. When that ended, then the last 5 years, this organization has completely been spinning its wheels from a management and ownership perspective. But now I think that they've finally made the management changes, and they've got some, you know, some credible people in those positions. I think that, you know, we need to see what happens this offseason, right? The trade deadline was a good first step, but we need to see what their vision, what their execution on their vision looks like this offseason, and what the plan and blueprint is. But just the fact that they've got some credible people in place gives you some faith. But for the last 5 years, it's been completely rudderless. So to be losing is one thing, but to not have hope is another. And until the management change happened, it just felt like there wasn't much hope.
All right, CFL draft for you next week, right, Farhan? Have I got that right?
Yeah, I'll be heading to Toronto for that. So that should be a lot of fun. You know, a thin CFL draft, but there are some pretty talented guys at the top of it, including a couple of North Delta kids that are the sons of Corey Philpott, Jalen, and Tyson. So looking forward to seeing where those guys go and what the Lions do with their picks.
We'll see what we can do to get some cheese sauce sent your way in Toronto next week. Thanks for this, Farhan.
Thanks, guys.